And so the song is about that investment to become our favorite selves. So there's like this. So I used to say our best selves, but then I heard someone say like that puts a lot of pressure. So instead of best selves, maybe say like your favorite self, which sounds much more like doable, and it's not, the criterion is not external to you, right? It's just like becoming that person that you really like being.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of A Life in 6 Songs. I am your host, David Reese, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Carolina and Raza.
Hey.
Hi there.
For those of you new to the podcast, and this is the first episode you're checking out, each week we embark on an epic adventure to find the songs that are stuck to us like audible tattoos that tell the story of who we are and where we've been to help us figure out where we're going to go. It's a story told through 6 songs. Let's go have a listen together. Our guest today is Fulden İbrahimhakkıoğlu. She is an associate professor of philosophy and gender and women's studies at Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey. She's also a punk musician, playing guitar and singing, and has played in several feminist punk and metal bands over the past 20 years. They recently finished touring Northern Europe, with her band Emaskülatör, and released a debut full-length album with her band Literally Anything Before Bros. I know Fulden from our time together in grad school at the University of Oregon. Fulden, welcome to A Life in 6 Songs.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited.
Me too.
So to get us started, before we dive into your 6 songs, we got 6 great songs and stories behind them. But before we do, just to kind of set the stage, tell us how you see music fitting into your life. What role does it play? How do you see it?
Well, it obviously plays a really major role, given that I spend a lot of time playing music and listening to music. I do need to listen to music because, it's also a great source of inspiration for the stuff that I write as well. But writing songs has been a part of my life ever since I was a little kid. It was actually like a game for me. I would come up with these melodies. I would write some lyrics. They were like very childish songs, obviously, but I would have a lot of fun doing that. And I would also have these tapes, which I would record on, just singing these songs that I hear on the radio and on TV, but singing them really terribly. So it's a big part of my life, really.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Can't wait to hear some more about those songs from your youth. Those are the best. It's great. I'm going to pass it over to Carolina, who's going to get us started with your first song.
Yeah.
All right.
I love your intro there, that you've been doing this since you were a really little kid. Like it's always so interesting to me, like what sticks with folks at what age. And so you like felt a connection to music from very, very young, which is really, really cool. You do write and perform, as we noted, but you listen to music also, right, throughout your day. And so for our first song, we'll ask, what's a song that's intimately connected to another activity, whether it's like a book or a location or a trip? What is it, and what was that activity?
Well, for me, I would say that it's Baby One More Time by Britney Spears, which was her very first song. Well, the song that she released, which she came to be known for. And she got really big with that in Turkey as well, which is where I grew up. And I got a cassette of this album after having seen a music video, I think, initially. And I would always play this cassette in the car. So during those trips that we took with my dad, traveling from our hometown, Izmir, to my grandma's house in Didim, which is like 2 hours or so away. We would always listen to this cassette, and I think it would kind of drive my dad crazy because he did not like pop music at all. He was such a rocker, and he would always want to listen to Queen or Pink Floyd or Rolling Stones and classic rock. But I love this cassette, and he wouldn't say anything about it, but I could kind of tell that he disliked it. So this song, whenever I hear it, and I think it's a killer song. I think it's become a classic over the years. And at that time, my dad had this perspective. He would tell me, pop is like a bubble. It's going to burst, but rock is forever. Like, he had that understanding. But I think still, this song really did become a classic of sorts, and I still listen to it sometimes, and it always takes me back to those trips that we took.
Nice. Let's take a listen and go back to those trips. For anyone that hasn't heard, here's Britney Spears' Baby One More Time.
How does it feel listening to it now?
Well, it feels wonderful, very nostalgic. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this the song? Is this the video where she's got like the red, like leather outfit?
No, I think that's Toxic. This one's the video's like she's a high school student, and she's just like waiting for the class to be over. Then during the break, they all start dancing.
Right.
Yeah.
Spontaneously burst into song and dance in high school.
This is that video that spawned so many Halloween costumes and other cosplay, because it's the schoolgirl dress, and she's got the white shirt on, but it's like open and tied, I think.
Yeah, like the pink pompons on her head.
Yes.
Catholic schoolgirl outfit, right?
Right.
I think so. Definitely like a private school situation.
Private school.
I think we've talked about this in other episodes about parents and kids and like music that, parents either put up with or pass down to their kids. And so kudos to your dad for not digging the music, but letting you like enjoy it.
Well, yeah, it's funny because right before Britney Spears, I was really into Spice Girls. And I didn't speak English at the time. So I would show my dad all these lyrics and ask him, so what are they saying in this song? What is this song about? And he would always look at it and he would say, this song is about dancing. Like, you always say the same thing.
That's awesome. What are they saying? Nothing important.
They're just dancing.
Well,
so
I think
funny.
compared to some of the classic rock themes like Queen and Pink Floyd and stuff, I think the Spice Girls and Britney Spears and some of the more popular bands, it's just completely random stuff. Seemingly, it's either that or your first crush or your first love or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like that thing of this is a no judgment podcast in the sense of we're not critiquing what anyone's listening to or not, because that's not the point. But just to kind of say it a little bit, it's sort of like that idea of, I think some people can dig on some kind of music, whether it's pop music or whatever it might be, just because, it's not as technical, it's not as deep, it's not as whatever. But it's like music can serve different functions, right? It's like food, right? There's different kinds of food. A waffle and eggs maybe in the morning is great, but if I have soup in the morning, maybe that's not as good. And so it's matching it to the right things.
Exactly. Like you wouldn't want to go to a club and then hear hardcore punk or something. I mean, if you go to that kind of a club, then
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
but you wouldn't want to like go to just dancing and hear like
Right.
something completely different.
Right.
It's more
Right.
contextual.
I'm not dressed for moshing. Like this is
Exactly.
I didn't bring Band-Aids and a first aid kit. I don't know. I've never moshed before. So
Oh, we got to change that then.
Do we? No.
To Turkey. Let's do some moshing all together.
Oh my god. Oh goodness.
Wait, do they have mosh pits in Turkey?
Oh yeah, of course.
Really? Oh, I'm learning. That's great.
Yeah, you should come to one of our shows.
I intend. Yeah, at the end of this podcast, I intend to. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely.
That's right.
I know. I mean, obviously, in Europe and Europe and South America are super, big fans of heavier music. But it's always odd. I know, like in Dubai, they have like the Desert Rock Festival, and some other countries. It's coming up. There's this cultural component as well. It's like new. It's new for some people, as it was in the States and in Western countries too. But that's great to hear. I will plan to mosh in Istanbul next time I'm there.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, David, write that down. When a Life in 6 Songs goes on tour, where are we going? And a stop will be to watch Fulden's band.
Have to. Definitely live stream it. Yeah. And it's funny too, because even in the US, talking about like moshing, I don't know how we started with Britney Spears and we got to moshing, but here we go. We're teasing what's coming up next. But even a lot of places here in the States are starting to try and limit, moshing and stage diving and everything else. And so
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just because, the US is very litigious, right? It's all about lawsuits and things like that. And so places just don't want to deal with it, and they're just like, no. It's not that there's nowhere, but it's just you definitely see it. You see it around. So
I see.
Yeah.
Anyway,
smaller clubs.
So we kind of started a bit with your childhood and riding in the car and listening to some pop music. And somewhat like happier times, but life is a journey with ups and downs. And so for your next song, what's a song that either maybe you've listened to during a difficult time, has helped you through a difficult time or situation, and what was it?
A song that's helped me through a difficult time is Teenage Whore by Hole, which was one of the first times where I got introduced to grunge and punk, and I identified a lot with Courtney Love at the time, actually, because she was bullied a lot in school, and I was bullied a lot, and I very much felt like an outcast, and she was the queen of outcasts, basically. And I know that she has a lot of bad rep, and at the time too, but I kind of understood where she was coming from at times, at least. And we're both cancers. That's the other thing. But that song really helped me go through a lot of those, or process a lot of those feelings of being an outcast. It's basically about a girl telling her mom or whatever, hey, like I'm a teenage whore, and it's just what I am, and like I don't care what you think. And I also had that very rebellious phase as well, and it also helped me see a whole different kind of a world where I wouldn't necessarily had to be afraid of being slut shamed, which was something very common, especially in high school. Like you want to get a little intimate with someone, and then all of a sudden you're being slut shamed for it. And especially in Turkey, where a lot of people have these conservative ideas about romance and sexuality. So it was like a song that helped me sort of break away from all of that. And yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah. Let's take a listen.
How's it feel listening to it now?
It feels really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite Paul songs, I think. And it's from this album, I think their first full-length album, which is super dark. And when I first started playing punk, I wanted to sound like that. I wanted our music to sound really dark and powerful, and not like the happy punk that we're often used to hearing on the radio.
Yeah.
She's got an amazing voice. Courtney Love does. I don't think she gets enough credit. I remember thinking back to, or right now I'm thinking back to the 90s and when grunge and those that genre of music was coming up. We always, or usually, my reference point for Hole and Courtney Love was sort of bad things, but not really delving into the issues that she was talking about. And there's a lot of darkness and substance there, and it's cool to see, so many years later how you related to some of the things that she was talking about, all the way back then. So
yeah,
it's cool to see that.
Yeah. We've talked across a few episodes of like some of those kind of female leading, either it was like grunge or more alternative band, from Alanis Morissette to Fiona Apple to, and I felt like still, they sort of made the mainstream, right? They were popular, they were on the radio, that kind of thing, but there was still sort of like this kind of mainstreamy likability about them. And I remember the first time I saw Courtney Love, and just like in awe of just how authentically herself she seemed, like this, just not giving any fucks about whether she was likable or not. And for people who are a little more repressed in childhood and are rebellious, but like really on the inside, you're just like, that's so cool. Like you just put it out there.
Precisely. And like all this shit that she gets from other people, most of it is like, all these rockers, like male rockers, do this stuff all the time, and everyone thinks it's cool and it's no big deal. But then when she does it, I think there's a lot of sexism involved in that. People just think that she's disgusting only because she's a woman doing these things that men did all the time, and they get a free pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so true about how her music got overlooked, right? Because she was being kind of either talked about as, Kurt Cobain's partner, right? Or how she, just like you said, Fulden, like doing all the things that lots of male rockers do, and get like lauded for, right? Like
Yeah.
we, like as rockers, like, oh, drug and coming on, and and it's like, oh, he's so out of it. And it's like, yeah, But when she does it, like you said, it's not okay, and they're gonna, everyone's gonna critique her in that way. And I think you're so right too. I think the music is so powerful in so many ways. If we take the time to listen to it.
Yeah. And people even claimed at some point that Kurt Cobain was actually writing all of her songs, which simply is not true.
Ugh.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
they should listen to these older albums, and it just sounds so authentic. I like that word that you used, Carolina. I think she sounds very, very authentic. And after her band got very popular, alongside this explosion of grunge, that's when they started to get very poppy. But still, I like the songs during that era as well. I think they're fun to listen to, but they're, to me, not comparable to this earlier stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember hearing the comparison, not the comparison, hearing a lot of the narrative around like her fame being solely tied to her marriage to Kurt Cobain and things like that, or like that's why she was famous, or he set her up, or, that kind of thing. But then when you actually like sat down to listen to that early work, you're like, no, she's super talented. This is really good stuff. It always irked me.
Yeah.
So, music has a way of connecting people and helps you identify. And we talked about music as kind of like a social currency and ways. And so I was curious, when you found, Hole in this music and you identified with her and you were going through similar things, was it you and, Hole, or did you find some other people, in high school or whatever that were also in that way, and did you connect?
Well, I was pretty lonely. I did have a best friend, so this was during middle school, but she wasn't interested in the same kind of music that I was interested in, so it wasn't like we weren't necessarily bonding over music. So I was precisely lonely in that regard.
Right.
But when
right,
I got to high school, I did meet a lot of people who were interested in similar kinds of music, and that's when we started playing together. But my discovery of Hole, I mean, I was already aware of them because they were so popular throughout my childhood. But the summer that I finished middle school, I took this trip to California, and I discovered this record store in Claremont. It was in Claremont at the time. Later, it moved, I think, to some other place. But it's called Rhino Record. And they had like all these CDs of Hole. And I got like maybe like 4 or 5 albums.
Do you have any more in the back, please?
Exactly. So I basically spent all my allowance on these records during that trip, and then the rest of the trip, I was there with my best friend, so she was like paying for my food and stuff. But so that was very formative for me, because I didn't have access to these records in Turkey. It was a very limited selection that we had in Turkey at the time, and then it wasn't very common to download or stream music during those years. I mean, some people did it. There was LimeWire or whatever.
Right.
But it wasn't very common. So yeah, it became this very formative experience having all these albums at hand, and they became my friends of sorts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like, thinking with that question of sometimes music can be our friend, right? And that's who we spend time with, or it can be this way we find other people, right? We connect because of those similarities. And so, yeah, thanks for that.
Hey, I got a quick question. So in Turkey, if you went to like your local, record store or cassette or CD store, to look for some of these more obscure type bands, what was that interaction like? Did they look at you funny, like, oh, why are you looking for these, obscure bands that no one's ever heard of? You should listen to, I don't know, Michael Jackson instead, or something more popular. Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, sometimes it really depends on where you go. At the time, there was this little record store in my hometown. It was called Excalibur, but it specialized
Bold.
in
Very metal.
yeah, it specialized in metal, exactly, and it would carry like all these super obscure metal bands, but also some popular stuff as well. So at some point, I think like the first time I stumbled into the store, I think I bought like a Backstreet Boys CD or whatever. But then like it was very dark. It was almost like a den inside, and the guy who owned the store like just stared at me and like judged me with his eyes, basically.
He's like, look, we only put that out to identify who's not allowed to shop at this store anymore.
But his store didn't necessarily carry all these like grunge albums or punk albums. He had some of them, but like we really needed a punk record store, I guess, and we didn't have that. It was mainly metal. Metal was very big at the time in Turkey.
Nice. Yeah, I asked because I was trying to find a comparison with Pakistan. I remember visiting a few. This was at least 10 years ago now, but there's a lot of bootlegging and stuff like that. At least there was back in the day of videos and cassettes and things. Basically, homemade playlists, and someone would create a metal playlist, put it in a store, and then sell like hundreds of copies of it. And I remember walking in once and asking someone for like a Typo Negative cassette. And I'm like, I'm looking for Typo Negative. And so this little kid runs in the back of the store. This is like you said, a den. That's a perfect description. That's exactly what it is. You got stickers and everywhere. And it's like the CBGB's, look.
Mm-hmm.
And some kid runs in the back and comes back with a dusty little cassette, goes, "Is this what you were looking for?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is." It was, I think, the October Rust CD. But yeah, but there were also instances where you would ask for, like, "Oh, do you have the new, I don't know, Megadeth album or something?" And they would look at you funny and go, "Megadeth? Why is such a nice, upstanding, child listening to Megadeth? You should listen to, Backstreet Boys instead." And here's the cassette. So yeah, I was wondering what that interaction was like in Turkey. So.
Yeah. Well, Megadeth at the time was actually very mainstream in Turkey. Yeah. And like all the high school kids, all the middle school kids, they would all listen to Megadeth. And
nice.
Yeah.
Wow. That was good. I was just about to ask that because you're saying like, what you wanted was harder to find, or but I was going to ask, what was the dominant popular music that everybody was listening to in middle and high school? So it was metal?
Yeah, it was metal. And this was like right around the time when new metal became huge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that also, I mean, when I was in middle school, everybody in my school listened to new metal. But then afterwards, I think it became like a gateway drug for people that they delved more into like other styles of metal.
Yeah.
And that's how everybody like discovered death metal and black metal and so on. In fact, I was playing in high school. My first bands were a black metal band and a doom metal band.
Ooh, nice.
So, yeah, wow. we were playing a lot of metal.
Dove right into the deep end.
I like it.
I'm so lost.
So
can somebody explain to me what new metal is, please?
So new metal is, think of that metal that got popular, like Korn, Limp Bizkit, System of a Down.
Okay.
The metal bands you probably know are new metal bands.
Our new metal, yeah.
Like
Okay.
that you listen to.
That's super
and
helpful.
it was just
Thank
that
you.
because it had sort of elements of like rap and other things, it sort of, like Fulden said, it was the gateway drug for a lot of people into other kinds of metal. You know, they get into this and they're like, I can kind of get with this, and then the metal friends like, try this.
Take it up a notch. That's cool. Thank you. That's helpful. And for any audience out there that doesn't know the distinctions, I'll ask about the other kinds of metal later offline. I'll be like, what's doom metal and what's black? But we were recently when we were in DC, we were in the car and you were explaining all these differences to me. We didn't make it to these genres.
Yeah. There's that funny meme out there. And it's describing different genres of not just metal, but sort of, rock and stuff like that in like these cute, funny ways. So it's like emo, the world's awful and I'm sad about it. Hardcore, the world's bad and I'm angry about it. What was it? Goth was the world's bad, but there's beauty in the bad, or something like that. And just funny.
I need that. I need that musical dictionary.
Yep, that's Raza's.
Oh goodness.
And metal people are notorious for like arguing about subgenres and everything like that. You hear it all the time. This is not that. This is not that. And you get down to it when people are like, just listen to what you like. Don't worry about the labels.
And if you ask the bands themselves, they always say, "Well, no, we refuse to conform to any specific subgenre." Yeah, it's like we have elements of everything else. It's like, yeah, but there is definitely one. Sorry, but hate to stereotype the metal, but it's there.
Well, I think once you start to discover it a little, like me, I had lots of questions, like what's this, or what's the difference? What would we classify this? So, like, just as you're learning about it, it can help to classify some things, even if it's loosely, so and it might help you open to like what you might like further, right?
Yeah. You need to label it a little bit, like you said, so we can communicate about it, right? Like, what kind of music is that? It's like, you can't just be like, it's no kind of music, it's just music. And it's like, well, that was a great conversation.
Right. If I said what's new metal and you came at me with like, it's typically defined by these time signatures, and I'd be like, you lost me. You lost me. When
that's
you
easy,
give me
because
bands,
new metal is almost 4/4 all the time. You can't be throwing any 7/8 or 15/16 time signatures in new metal.
I knew I opened a can of worms. I knew it when I brought up time signatures. Oh my goodness.
I knew David was all over that. He says, nope, hold on, I got it.
I knew it. So, thinking about our day-to-day lives and the role that music plays, sometimes music can transport us to a specific time in our life or place. So for your next song, what's a song that, right when you hear it, you're just instantly transported to a specific time or place? What's that song and where does it take you?
So every time I hear Babes in Toyland's Dust Cake Boy, I'm always transported to the first year of college, when I was trying to get adjusted to a new city, and I was listening to a lot of Babes in Toyland at the time, and I really wanted to be like and sound like Kat, who's the lead singer and the guitarist of Babes in Toyland. And I thought she sounds fantastic. And I'm actually very lucky because they did like a reunion tour, and I got to see them live in Portland at some point when I was living in Oregon. So at the time, we had just started this punk band called Second and Underpants from two of my friends from high school, and we all ended up in Istanbul together to go to college. And so I would play this for them, and I would be like, how does she sound like that? Like, how can she do all these screams? I want to sound like that. And so my best friend at the time, Jeren, she said, well, she's just like being free, you know. She's just super confident, and you can too if you're like that. And I'm like, no, I don't think. But then years later, actually, I realized that there was a lot of truth to that. I realized that I was often holding back, thinking that it wouldn't sound good, or at least like it wouldn't sound as good, that I, you know, couldn't do it. And those are limiting beliefs that we need to find a way to get rid of, I think. And I mean, that's how you find your own voice, I guess, by not
Yeah.
thinking that, oh, it's not going to sound good. You just need to let that go and just let it be. And eventually it will sound good. So I just always think about that whenever I hear that song.
Nice. Let's listen. Waves in Toyland. It's awesome.
Love it.
How does it feel listening to it now?
Well, it feels really dynamic, like it pulls you in, and I kind of want to dance right now. But at the time, like this band was like nothing that I had ever heard before, and I do think that they are very unique in their own way. And so they were active during the grunge era, and they had a lot of grunge in their music, but I think there are all these other elements that makes what they're doing very original. And it's just their own sound. Like the drumming is so different than what you usually hear, and Kat's voice and her like guitar and the bass, like everything is so unique to me. So it always like pulls me in. Yeah, I love them to this day.
I love what you said about like vocal performance, and how if you, unless you let everything out, unless you let it loose, it really for some reason it does translate when you're singing into a mic, and the sound that comes out, if you don't put everything you've got in it, for some reason it translates. People can tell in what they're hearing that no, it doesn't sound right, and then if you just let it, close your eyes and let it loose, it's, for whatever reason, it sounds more authentic, it sounds better, which is the truth, which is that there is a difference between letting loose versus holding things back. And for some reason, for vocalists, it really does translate over into there's something between mouth to microphone to speaker that it has to be authentic, otherwise it sounds terrible. And this sounds good. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first time I actually sang on stage was for one of our union events, the Great Cover Up in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And we did like we had a Bikini Kill cover band. And that
Nice.
was actually the first time that I managed to play and sing at the same time, whereas before that felt very impossible for me. But during that event, which is not necessarily a punk event, I mean, it just has all these different genres, but we were the first band to play,
You guys
I guess,
crashed
that
it, right?
night. Well, what happened was we started playing, and I just like started screaming, basically. And then some people were like covering their ears, which I thought was hilarious. But I had so much fun with it. I actually saw that and felt affirmed by it rather than feeling, oh, like I must sound horrible or something, because like I wanted it to sound very loud.
Right.
Yeah, that
That's
was a
what
lot
punk
of
rock
fun.
is. Yeah,
Right.
mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Fulden, you're kind of blowing my mind right now, and I'll say because so David notoriously like loves metal. I sort of notoriously don't, and my feeling generally, it's more of a gut feeling. Like when I hear the screaming, it makes me tense up, and I tell him, I joke that it makes me feel stabby. Like it just makes me feel like aggressive. But I think maybe my approach to the music wasn't fully like open. And so hearing you describe the idea of the screaming as a almost like human primal, like letting go,
Mhm.
like a freedom in it. I'm having a moment with it. Like it's making me think about it differently than than aggression, which very well might be there in some songs, depending on lyrics and like that still very much might be there. But I think I was painting it all with the same brush and thinking about it as like a letting go of emotion and sound.
Well, so I have this this condition. It's called Hashimoto's, and it's like it has to do with the thyroid. And so for years I tried to, like they say, it's not curable. It's just something that you live with, and you just take thyroid pills. But then you have like all kinds of other symptoms depending on if you're hypo or hyper. You just tend to oscillate between the two a lot. But so at some point, my dad was actually the one who told me this. He said, look, you're bottling up a lot of emotions and you're not expressing yourself. And this has to do with your throat chakra. So he's all into that like chakra, like energy type of thing. And he said, like, you need to learn to express yourself. And this is how you're going to feel better. And that's actually how I started to sing. And it does help a lot. So that was a game changer for me. I don't know, but it does make you feel really, I don't know, like empowered in a way to be able to do that.
Yeah. I was thinking about it in getting your songs ready for today. You know, you've got a lot of punk rock on here and, you know, the screaming and the letting loose. And I was thinking about, as adults, we really don't yell and scream that much, right? There's not a lot of opportunities to do it unless you are a lead singer of a punk rock band or something like that. But when you're kids, you know, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're, you know, playing all that stuff. And what you just said speaks so true in the sense, you know, of, you know, we talk about how we sit so much now as human beings, and that's really fucking us up because we were meant to move and walk. And I wonder if we're also meant to like yell and scream, and sort of adult life in our contemporary society doesn't allow it. Because there's something very freeing about it. Like I think about it now and like, go let out a scream, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. That's not what you want. But it's like,
it's not civilized.
It's not civilized. You know, what would people think? But it's like just so great. And I think that's another thing, Carolina, to your point about metal and punk and hardcore, whatever it is, that's, you know, stabby music, as you would describe it. That's what I think is really there, because when I hear it, I feel that release. They're screaming for me in a sense. Like I'm not screaming, but I can hear this person screaming, and that's kind of solidarity with that. So I love your explanation of that, Fulden.
Well, you know, from like a PR perspective, that's exactly what a lot of, at least the bigger metal bands, are doing. They're calling their shows, you know, whether they call it like a ritual, like the way Ghost does, or whether they call it like a family reunion. I mean, if you go to like a Metallica show, Hetfield's up there and he talks about, hey, the Metallica family is here. It's like it's family. We're here together in this like positive experience, you know, chanting and screaming and letting loose, and it's a good thing. And I think something about that, you know, in our times at least, these days, it really resonates. It's just like, yeah, you've got 80,000, 100,000 fans screaming their heads off for, a couple of hours. And then after that, we're good. We're happy. We're chill.
Right.
I
scream at the show so I don't stab people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, also as a kid, like you pointed out, David, you scream not only when you're throwing a fit, but also when you're just like playing and you're really happy. And so it can also be kind of like that when you're singing. It doesn't always have to be an expression of anger or negative emotions or just like bottled up feelings, but it could just be a form of play. And that's how I've always seen music to be, just a form of play. And anything could really be a form of play. Anything that makes you feel really exhilarated and whole and powerful. And that's just one of those things, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm thinking of a weird reference here, but there's a very famous in the running world ultra runner, Scott Jurek. He set all kinds of records and stuff like that. And his thing is, before the start of every race, when everyone's lined up, right before the gun goes off, he lets out this like guttural like yell. And it kind of just gets him in the mindset of like, kind of going primal, and we're going to run this race and I'm going to do it. And it's so funny because when you see him, he doesn't look like someone. I mean, I guess I'm stereotyping there, but you're like, no, you wouldn't do that. You seem, Raza, would you say like civilized, proper,
soft spoken.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's something to it. And it sort of sets it up like Fulden, like you said, like we're going to go run this, 50-mile race or whatever through the woods. And there's play in that. And so let me just pull up my inner child, let out a good scream and go run. So yeah, I think there's definitely something there. I'm going to go in the bathroom and yell after this.
Well, and I'm having all kinds of feelings because at what point in kids' lives do we tell them to like stop screaming and shut up and quiet down and like, what are we doing?
Everything wrong.
Go out there and play.
This is gonna be one of those episodes that just like melts my brain. All right.
Well, Carolina, episode 1 was, David's episode was supposed to be, one of our, I guess maybe it was like an unspoken goal, was to get you more in tune with punk and metal. I think we're pretty close. I think we're getting there.
You're getting there.
We're getting there.
You're getting there.
Just had to bring in the big guns. Fulden had to come along.
That's right.
You were like, no more messing around. We're bringing on the ultimate here. It's good stuff. For hours after this, I'm going to be sitting there going, what else did I not see? But to move us ahead, thinking about sometimes in our lives when we have difficult moments, music can help get us through. They can help guide us or be our friends. And sometimes, when we listen to it years later, it can bring up challenging memories or things like that. So for your next song, what's a song that maybe you struggle or not to listen to, but it's definitely connected to difficult memories? What song is it?
For me, it's Your Graduation by Modern Baseball. It's a pop punk song that is somewhat sad. It's my depression song. And I tend to listen to it on loop when I'm depressed. But it has that uplifting effect for me. I don't know, it's comforting in some way for me. And it may have to do with the fact that pop punk got really big when I was growing up. I wasn't really interested in it at the time. I thought it was kind of silly, like all these Blink 182 videos that were on MTV, and they were doing this like ridiculous stuff. So this was right around the same time when they had those shows like what was it called? How they were harming each other, doing all these like Jackass.
Jackass. Yes. So
it was kind of like that part of that whole like, what are you doing? type of response that
Your-
I had to those
Your adult
things.
came out right there. The punk rocker took a break, and it's like, what are all these people harming each other? Oh,
Well, yeah. And like as a kid, I thought it was somewhat funny, but I didn't really identify with pop punk all that much, even though it was really huge in Turkey and everywhere else, pretty much. But right during my late 20s and like early 30s, I rediscovered pop punk, and I discovered all these bands that I never heard before, like Modern Baseball or the Ataris, and I like really fell in love with them. And listening to them made me feel very nostalgic because they sounded like all these bands that I didn't like when I was a kid, but they were
Yeah.
playing everywhere. But to me, it felt like something that I failed to appreciate at the time, and just took for granted. And now that I've gotten older, it just brings me back to those times. And so this is for me like a very comforting song, and it's a song about it's like lyrically it's a terrible song. I mean, it's very creepy and toxic.
Oh no.
It's about this guy who's like obsessed with this girl for like 3 years and can't stop thinking about her. But then like he finally lets go. And I guess that's what your graduation means. Like she has graduated from his thoughts or
you
whatever.
moved on.
Yeah, I mean, he uses that metaphorically, but maybe there was also an actual graduation. I don't know about that, but but the video is really great too. I really enjoyed the music video of that song as well. But it's in general, it's just something that it sounds very sad, but ironically, it's also uplifting and comforting, and it has rescued me from tremendous heartbreaks. And it's just a song that I very much like, even though it's tied to a lot of difficult times that I've gone through.
Yeah. Let's take a listen.
Brush my shoes against the pavement. I swear this is gonna be the 100th time I've thought of you tonight. You weren't the only one who thought of us that way. I spend most nights awake, wide awake. I never thought that I would see the day where I just let you go, let you walk away. Where I let you walk away. Don't you call, you crook, called you abandoned. There ain't no other good damn reason why.
That sounds fun.
It is.
Like, I
yeah.
can see why it's
a fun
uplifting.
song.
It's got that good nostalgic kind of early-ish 2000s. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
41-ish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's this like pop punk is funny in that way, especially like as you get into the more, emo things and stuff like that. And it's this like upbeat song, but it's like, I'm going to slit my wrist because I can't be with you. And you're like, the sound and the lyrics don't go together here. It's
Yeah. At some point, I tried to play this song, and it has the most complicated chords that I've ever seen in my life, and I still can't play it. Like I have no idea. I mean, it sounds very easy when you listen to it. Oh, like this is fun, and but it's really not. It's a very difficult song to play.
It sounded cool. It sounds like it I'm going to go back and definitely listen to this one again because it sounds like it goes through different like modes. There's some quieter moments, and then there's some like heavier moments, and there's some sounds like that. Like there's a lot to it. I like it.
Yeah, and so the part that we listened to at the end, the drummer's actually singing there. So it's an interesting song in that regard too. Yeah, the drummer has a verse in it.
I have a thing as a drummer.
no.
I have a thing against drummers that sing, but not like in their ability to sing. Like, I don't think drummers should sing because they don't have a voice, but just as a drummer, I feel like when they're singing, they are potentially sacrificing the drumming in that way. But we'll leave that for another show, because another podcast altogether, because this is judgment free. So I'm not going to talk any shit.
This one's judgment free. So we need to find the judgy music podcast.
That's right. That's
You can
right.
share your views there.
I'll start that for
drumming
myself, and
singing.
I'll just complain about things.
You'd be like the Andy Rooney of.
Here I am listening to more music that I hate. No. You said, Fulden, that you listen to this when you're depressed or when you're down, and it comforts you. We've used the phrase before of a life preserver song, right? So like that song you need when I can't make it and I need to keep from drowning. How do you feel that working for you? Is it the fact that someone else is feeling that same way and so you feel less alone, or how does that life preserver song work for you?
Well, I think a part of it is the sound. Like, it just reminds me of early 2000s when I was still a kid. I think a part of it is that, but also lyrically. I just called it toxic, but I tend to also get like that sometimes. Like, I tend to get very obsessive, and like find it very difficult to move on. And since this is a song that has that or explores that theme, like someone is having a really difficult time moving on, but then he eventually does, I think it resonates with me on that level as well.
Yeah. You see yourself in it.
Yeah. And it's funny that you, what did you call it? Like a lifesaver or?
Life preserver.
Oh, life preserver. Yeah.
Like you're on a boat and you go overboard and you throw the life preserver or what's the ring called? I don't even know, because the life preserver is technically something you wear, but it came up in our previous episode.
Floaties. I did the floaties.
Yeah,
The little
floaties.
floaties, the little wings, whatever you want.
This song was actually featured in one of those compilation albums that go with the name "Songs That Saved My Life." So it was
there you go.
covered. Like, it's these albums are basically covers by a bunch of different bands of songs that they deem to have saved their lives. So this was covered by another pop punk band, and I'm blanking on their name right now. But I like the original better, I think. Even though the cover is still good, it's just the original seems to have a much more of an intensity of feeling, I guess.
I liked how you said that that the lyrics can be they can be taken as toxic and things like that. But I think that that's precisely the point of art, of entertainment and art, is to delve into those creepy or dark or offensive or rebellious themes. It's important to do that because I think that it allows, when you allow artists to have that space to explore it and then come to some conclusion, whatever that is, and put it out there, I think that expression is super important. Because for the very reason that, life isn't all, peaches and unicorns, and it's important to delve into those themes so that if an audience member resonates with it, it can actually literally save their life.
Yeah.
It can literally make them feel like they are not alone, and to prevent artists from having the ability or the right to express that, whether it sounds creepy, if verse 1 is creepy or wrong, or it's expressing some thoughts that are just jarring for some people, like chances are by the time they get to the conclusion of that piece of art, there will be something positive in it, and I think that space should be there. And a lot of times, I know that especially from a cultural standpoint, art stuff gets banned and stuff gets censored and things like that. And it's important to recognize that stuff that is just on face value might seem wrong or toxic or dark or whatever. It can actually save someone's life. So, anyway, I'm done with my soapbox now.
Well, I certainly agree with that, but the danger that I see in this song in particular is like this romanticization of this, like this way of not only behaving, but even if it's someone who's not necessarily bothering anyone, it's still like a romanticization of self-harm of some kind. And I think it's important to not romanticize that. And I think it's very common in pop punk, in particular, to like romanticize self-pity and self-harm and all these things. And I think we need to have conversations about, how we can take up these topics, but then put them in like a different kind of a frame that's not going to render them as like as something that's good and desirable. But I mean, we need to have these conversations so that we could explore these topics in a way that would serve healing in some way. And I don't mean to say that, I don't mean to say like this song is terrible and like we should censor it. Like I don't mean that, but I just think that there is this trend that could possibly be harmful.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if we take, you can consider the lyrics or art a metaphor for, insert several aspects of your life. And so to Raza's point, I feel like it's good to express those things, but I think if we just leave it like within and not discuss the topic, whatever's coming up for you, then it can like fester into something harmful, right? Sometimes toxic lyrics like this can make us self-reflect on times in our lives when we weren't our best selves, when we gave into vices or obsessions or, didn't handle that breakup really well or, things like that. But there is that danger, Fulden, of like aspiring to that in the future.
Yeah.
And so I think if we just sit with the music, but don't talk about it talk about the feelings that come up with anyone, then there's risk that it becomes romanticized or like aspirational and then something like more dangerous. But then when you talk in community or friendship and share, like, this is what's coming up for me,
Yeah.
You said conversation. I think that's the key, right? It's you have the space to say, what's on someone's mind, but let's talk about it. Let's have let's engage and let's discuss and let's really understand, in a positive way what can be done, what outcomes we can come up with that actually facilitate healing and things like that.
I think throughout the story we've told so far, you've had quite a bit of changes, right? Moving to a new city for college, and then you met David all the way in Oregon, so far away from Turkey. You've had a lot of transitions in your life, and sometimes music kind of scores the soundtrack to some of those transitions. So for your next song, what's that song that you associate with kind of a weighty transition in your life?
Richard by Bratmobile is a song that I associate with Oregon a lot. And having lived there for 5 years, doing my PhD there, lots of memories. But I think it's mostly because Bratmobile started in Eugene, Oregon. They were students at the University of Oregon at the time, which is where David and I went many years later. But there were still traces of them a little bit. I mean, there was that record shop. What was it called? Like the House of Records or something? I think that used to be like
Yeah.
a studio for them. Like there used to be the
Nice.
studio in the
Oh,
back
cool.
where Bratmobile used to play. So I mean, I was very excited when I got the news that I got into Oregon, not just because I was happy that I got into a PhD program, but also because that's where that's where Riot Girls started, and all these bands that I really love are from the Northwest. So I was hoping that I would see like a lot of shows there, but of course, I mean, the movement had died out by then. Although I did see some like really, really cool shows during my time in Oregon. But yeah, the song it's a sad song, and Oregon is somewhat of a sad place that doesn't have a lot of sunshine and it rains a lot. So that was kind of difficult for me as someone who's just so used to the sunshine. Um, but yeah, we took a lot of vitamin D, and I mean enjoyed the trees. It was very green. Yeah, but the song still reminds me a lot of Oregon.
Nice. Let's take a listen and go back to Eugene, Oregon.
I don't care about you. Don't you pretend that I do. I saw you on the bus. I was filled with disgust. Talk your shit, words. Live your life,
Nice.
That
I
was-
can totally see that just
I know.
being play like and some random place. Like I can imagine
Yeah.
walking into like a pizza joint and they're up there just singing away.
Yeah, it sounds like rainy weather, doesn't it?
Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing that really impressed me about Bratmobile is that it was started by just, some university students who had no idea how to play any instruments. But they wanted to be a part of the Riot Girl movement. So they basically like picked up a guitar and then they ended up recording one of my all-time favorite albums, and I think that it's actually like one of the punk classics, their debut, Potty Mouth. It's just like such a wonderful album. It's full of these like punk hits. And it's also the music got featured in this one video game called Gone Home, which is set in Oregon. So I mean, it's like it sounds very much like Oregon, and it's Oregonian music, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the move to Oregon and the decision to apply to the University of Oregon for your PhD, what motivated that? How did University of Oregon get on your radar? How did you find yourself applying there?
So I was actually initially a psychology student as an undergrad. So in Turkey, you don't declare a major; you take a test, and then they place you. So you like after you take the test and you get like your points or whatever, you say, okay, so this is the university and the major that I want to be in. So you like enter the university already with a major, and it's actually very difficult to change it if you want to change it later on.
Wow.
You may even have to take the test again. But so I wanted to be a therapist, and that's why I wanted to study psychology. But then I was also very much interested in reading like psychoanalytic theory. I really liked reading in general. But in psychology, all we had were textbooks. which I did not like reading. And like there wasn't anything to think about there. They were just conveying information that we were supposed to know. There were no discussions, nothing. And that felt very like flat to me. I did not enjoy that. So I started taking philosophy courses, and then I ended up double majoring in philosophy. But the thing about philosophy was that I really liked contemporary philosophy and continental philosophy in particular. And I didn't enjoy having to, go back to these like really old texts and then discussing, is this what they meant or did they mean this other thing? That kind of felt like, well, I'm not interested in any of that. I'm just interested in how philosophy can offer
Right.
like a new perspective on the contemporary issues that we are having, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go to a very like a classical philosophy, like a traditional
Right.
philosophy department. I applied to a lot of interdisciplinary programs, given that I was interested in doing critical theory mostly. But those programs, they had like very little funding, so they could they were either unable to admit international students, or they only admitted like one international student or something. And this was right around the time when most of those programs were located in California, and California was going bankrupt at the time. The UC system was failing. So I applied to a bunch of different places, some more traditional departments than others. And I did get into 2 master's programs, but Oregon was the only PhD program that offered like a full package with a fellowship and everything. So that was a really great deal, even though I kind of wanted to go to New School. They only gave me like 1/3 of a scholarship, and New York City is very expensive. So I figured, well, I don't think I'll be able to do this. And yeah, but I loved Oregon. I loved going there. I loved the program. And I'm so thankful to have met you two there as well.
The bonus. I feel the same way. Yeah. Whatever my time in Oregon was, I met some definitely met some good people.
Yeah. And it definitely was not a traditional philosophy program, which I also appreciated.
Yeah.
So
that's what I was looking for too. So, took classes in Native American philosophy, feminist philosophy, philosophy of race, just like you said, all of those things that aren't just let's rehash what Aristotle really meant when he said this,
And that was required. Like, I remember that. I found that super impressive that, like, the feminist philosophy and stuff was required for everybody.
Yeah.
I remember being super impressed by that. Because it's
Yeah,
not a nice to
I
have.
think it's
It's
one
a
of
must
the
have.
few universities that do
For
that.
sure.
I think it's very difficult to design your graduate program like that, but they've somehow managed to do it, and everyone's on board with it, which I think is great. Yeah, at my university, we don't have like any required courses whatsoever. So people just take whatever they want. But I very much enjoyed taking courses, even courses that I had no interest in, like analytic philosophy. Those pro seminars were a way to, like those required pro seminars were a way to build community. Also because it was always like the first and the second years, like taking them together. So yeah, I thought it was great.
And it's a way to figure out what you don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, I think I'm drawn to this. Same as like music, right? You hear different music and you're like, well, let me explore this and check it out. And maybe there's something to it. Or maybe I realize, that's really not my thing. So, yeah. That's so funny too that you mentioned New School. I'm sure like all of us people that were, wanting to do graduate work in philosophy that were interested in, these non-traditional, more contemporary critical theory stuff. did the same thing because I was the same way as you. I applied to new school and they called me like a week before classes started actually, and were like, "Hey, we have a spot for you." And I'm like, I have a family. I can't move to New York in a week. It's not going to happen. And then like funding issues. Yeah, it's like
It was
super expensive.
So I did a degree after my bachelor's at the new school, at the Parsons School of Design. And I finished the 2-year degree in 1 year because it was so expensive, like doubled up on courses. And I was like, I just need the degree and I need
makes you
to get out of
ambitious,
here.
right?
It's so expensive between the school and just New York City. Like living in the city was like, whew, it's just a lot. I love hearing, just because we have that shared experience in Oregon, but like a song that reminds you of that time. I think I didn't equate the weather so much, but I think that's part of the package. Like I have fond memories of that time, the rain, the like darkness, but also like just really cool people. I think as you were describing the department, I remember all of you went on strike, like in the rain, just like picketing and stuff. Like, I don't know. It just felt like a really cool time.
Yeah. Going on strike in Eugene, Oregon has like an extra layer of it because it's like that's where, you know, the anarchist movement in the 70s really got going. The eco anarchism or not eco, environmental movement.
Environmental.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Got going there in the 70s. So yeah, it definitely has that, you know, and a great place to like you said, do punk rock.
Right. Listen to music different from all the other cities in which I've lived in the United States. Like it just has its own vibe out there.
Yeah. Did you know when you got into Oregon and came for your PhD, did you have a plan of what you wanted to do after, in the sense of, was the plan always to move back to Turkey and get a teaching position there? Or was it just sort of like, in the academic world, I'm going to, wherever I can get a job?
Well, actually, it's funny because I kind of saw that fellowship as my way out. I couldn't wait to get out of Turkey at that point. And I think this is a sentiment that's shared by a lot of young people who live here, given that the ruling party, it looks like they're not going anywhere for any time soon, and their politics is just incredibly capitalistic and also like repressive in all these other ways. And so I mean, right now especially, the economy is also terrible. So on top of all of that, there are all these like other issues. But so at the time, I thought that I never wanted to come back. But being apart for a few years, I actually like really, really missed home. I got very homesick when I lived in Oregon.
Wow.
And during my 5th year, I just remember even telling my advisor, I told her like, I can't do this. Like, I really need to go back. And she really wanted me to apply jobs in the States as well, which I did. And I think if I hadn't had to finish up so quickly, because I wanted to just finish in 5 years and not take like a 6th year there, I had to like finish my dissertation the same year and did all those job applications during the same year, which was sort of wild.
That's a lot.
But if I hadn't done that, if I just took another year, I probably would have ended up with a job in the States. But I was kind of afraid because I was getting all these interviews and I was kind of scared, like, I don't want to get this job. But I need the practice, so I'm going to do the interview. But I don't want to stay in the States. So I was very anxious about that. Because if I were to be offered the job, like, I'm not going to turn it down.
Right.
I'm going to take it. But I really wanted to go back. And it's funny because I was so eager to go back. But the summer I went back, there was a coup attempt. And then there was like a state of emergency for so long. And there was also like this witch hunt of dissenting academics. And I was a signatory to this peace statement, and they were
Mhm.
basically firing people who signed this statement. But I somehow, like in the midst of all of that, I managed to get a position at Middle East Technical University, which is known as a very like a left-leaning university historically too. I mean, we have a stadium that has the word revolution, like devrim in Turkish, written on it. So yeah, it worked out. But yeah, it was strange, like leaving Turkey and not expecting to go back, but then
Right.
feeling so sick and like not waiting,
Yeah.
not being able to wait to come back, and yeah.
Yeah, it goes to like the music point and the, the Aristotle point or whatever. Like sometimes you've got to explore other things just to know what you had is what you wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. We are nearing.
Moving along.
We're at your last song. And I'm super excited about this song because it's your band. So I won't. Yeah. What's a song? Sorry, I got excited. What's a song that's part of a perfect moment where everything just felt right for you?
So this song is called Cargo Shorts and Broken Hearts. And it's by Literally Anything Before Bros, which is my new band. And we just released a full-length album this summer, last summer. And this song is a song that I wrote during the pandemic, which was a very intense period for a lot of people. And so during this period, I actually wrote a lot of songs. I wrote most of this album during the pandemic, and I think it's quite typical for a lot of musicians. There are all these albums that were coming out post-pandemic, and
Yeah,
this is actually one of them. But this song is really about healing for me because during the pandemic, I have had to sort of figure out ways to make myself feel safe and make myself like cheer myself up, really. And because we had no way to like get together with people and just sort of get our mind off of things, I was struggling a lot. And I already mentioned that I have this tendency to become obsessive, and that got very heightened during this
Sure.
time when we were like
Yeah.
cooped up. So I basically wrote this song as a part of that healing journey, trying to figure out, well, how can I be otherwise? How can I do otherwise? How can I embrace this, other way of being that's not going to indicate self-sabotage, and that's not going to be harmful for me. So, and I really like this song. I think it's my favorite on the album, even though it's not very punk. It's a song that I kind of like experimented with in terms of my like singing style. I had never sung in that way before, and that was sort of difficult for me because I was just going like high and low a lot, and I think this is the first time that I tried doing that. So it's challenging, not just like lyrically, but also musically as well. Yeah, that's the song.
Nice. Let's take a listen.
I'm into a care package for the cold of winter. I did it for me. I need to fall for someone else, and it's so nice. We'll always have that lovely day at the lake, walking
Love it.
It's cool.
I
Like it.
do. Yeah.
What's your favorite lyric from that song?
My favorite lyric from that song.
Or the
Well,
favorite
I'm like
line?
blanking on the lyrics right
Oh.
now. Now that you put me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
But there's this part about like doing, trying to do what's best for me rather than like what I'm used to or like familiar with. Because I think that's what happens with trauma bonding. And sometimes it's very difficult to differentiate that from the love that you feel for someone. Like if it's trauma bond and if it's like a terrible relationship for you, you just stay with it instead of just like taking a step back and thinking, okay, like this is a form of self-sabotage. So even though like I'm very attached, I need to find a way to sort of protect myself and choose to do what's best for me. And so the song is about that investment to become our favorite selves. So there's like this. So I used to say our best selves, but then I heard someone say like that puts a lot of pressure. So instead of best selves, maybe say like your favorite self, which sounds much more like doable, and it's not the criterion is not external to you, right?
Right,
It's just
right.
like becoming that person that you really like being. So the song is about that, and yeah, so that's my favorite part, I guess. Just becoming your favorite self.
Yeah. I
Like
love
it.
that. It reminds me of I heard a quote recently. I want to say it was Rick Rubin that said it, and it was like sort of the definition of success is creating something that you like.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you've done it, right? And I think, you know, what you're saying right there is just it, your favorite self. Like if you can put something out there, create something, and you go, I like that. That's gold.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, I think, to what we were saying way back at the beginning of sort of the the writing process and you know, you can't censor yourself. You got to just be free and put it out there. Like you can't write music or create really almost any art by trying to think what people would want. Right? Because then it just comes out as false and fake, and you're trying to get standards that aren't there. You got to just do what you want. And so I appreciate it. I love. We listened to one of Raza's songs on his interview, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of doing these is having people on and listening to their music. It's just like I just love it. I love hearing someone's music and then talking to them about it. It's just, it's great. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And David, I've been actually meaning to ask you about your shirt, Nashville Hardcore.
Yep. Nashville
So is that
Hardcore.
from like a festival or something?
So it's from what I know of it, we just moved to the Nashville area last summer. So we've only been there about a year. And so what do you do when you get to a new place? You start finding the Facebook groups and other things of what you like. And so, yeah, this is a Nashville Hardcore is a Facebook group and group of people that share upcoming shows, talk about the scene, share different stuff. And they recently just put out some shirts for the group so we can represent. And I was like, what a perfect time to wear it when we've got this punk rock hardcore stuff for the show. So yeah.
Are there a lot of hardcore bands in Nashville?
There's a decent scene actually. It's so funny because you have downtown Nashville, right? Broadway, the strip with all the, you know, honky tonk bars and, you know, all of that. And there's all the bachelorette parties there, and they all look the same because they all get the cowboy hats and pink and the sashes, and it's just such a touristy type scene. And then you go across the river to the east side of Nashville, and that's where all like the authentic local places are to see bands. And there's some venues there with some history to them too. Caroline and I just went and saw a show, not a hardcore show, but at what was it, Exodin?
I think so, yeah.
People are going to kill me in Nashville for not knowing that, because it's like the historic place.
I'll look it up.
Lots of bands. And then right across the street from that is another venue that has lots of people. So Nashville's really kind of like it's known as, country music haven, but it's really becoming just kind of a it's called Music City, right? So it's like there's lots of different music there. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be so much fun to play there one day with my band Emasculator.
Totally.
Yes, 100%.
When I get more connected with some people and get going to more shows and see what's going on, I'll see if we can't get you to come over.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would.
So yeah, the music venue is called Exit In, and it's historic. Lots of bands and stuff have played like early shows. It's a tiny place, but it's near, I think, like that Music Row. There's like a street in Nashville, and don't come at me in comments if I get this wrong, but it's got all like the music labels have like offices there and stuff like that. So the city itself is very musically driven from a business standpoint, and artists that might not be country but come here for vocal coaches and all kinds of other like music industry support that's based here.
A lot of metal people are retiring in Nashville. I think I'm sensing that.
That's right. Yeah, you had mentioned that before. Yeah. Lots of people moving back here and stuff. A lot of people from the 90s, especially folks that were big in the 90s and I guess early 2000s and stuff. Now that they're in their sort of, I guess, retirement age, still rocking, but it's like, let's not do the LA thing anymore and then partying all night. Let's kind of go chill and buy a farm or a winery in Nashville and hang out. Have some hot chicken there. It just was Forbes just did a study. I just saw that Nashville ranks as the number one for worst commute.
Oh wow!
In the country, and that factors in infrastructure too. So not just like how much time you spend in your car, but like access to bike lanes and trails and public transportation. There's like no public transportation. It's crazy, and so it's kind of getting to I feel like a breaking point. Not that I'm like ripping on it or anything like that, but like things are going to need to like change in the sense of like infrastructure and stuff, because it's just. Like the airport, they're just building like crazy there because it's just so many people are going in and out. And so, yeah.
Speaking of airports, oh my God, the Istanbul airport is phenomenal. It's the biggest structure I've ever seen in my life, and it's amazing. So yeah, you guys did something really awesome.
Well,
that's cool.
They do a lot of connecting flights for like, so whenever I have to come back to Ankara from like a place I went to abroad, I always have to fly into that particular airport.
Mm-hmm.
But then like it takes you like so long to just get to the other terminal. And I mean, it's huge, but it doesn't seem to me to be like very well connected. Like it's very difficult to get from a place to another place inside that airport. It would have been helpful to have maybe like a tram or something like that, but yeah, I guess you could.
So Nashville and the Istanbul airport both need better public transportation.
Yeah.
Well, after eating all of that amazing like kanafe and baklava and stuff, you got to walk it off. So.
That reminds me of LAX. Whenever we would fly back to Oregon and stuff, a lot of times we would connect through LAX if we were coming from like abroad. You'd have to like completely exit through customs and completely go back in, and you were like, this is taking forever.
Yeah.
All right, Fulden. We have we've finished your life in 6 songs story. Thank you so much for trusting us with your music and your stories. I'll ask here as we finish that out, like, how does it feel to hear your life reflected through song?
Well, that was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for having me. And it feels really nice. Yeah, I feel very happy right now. Yeah, because I mean it's all like coming together, and the way in which you like organize the questions, it's very chronological almost. So that felt really nice to just do a little retrospective into my life. Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for trusting us with your story and your songs. And this is so great to reconnect too. And
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
So
Awesome.
you're not done quite yet though. We can kick it over to Raza for our last little part before we sign off.
Yeah. So Fulden, it's been awesome. It's been a pleasure, having you on. So one of the last things that we do before we sign off is we'll ask our guest, what was your first, last, and best or favorite concert?
I think my first concert was this show that I went to with my dad. And there's this Turkish rock singer. Her name is Şebnem Ferah. She toured with this like pop singer, Kenan Doğulu. They were doing like a Pepsi tour, actually. Uh, so we went to
Capitalism.
yeah, yeah. But it's like 2 very different genres. But I guess they were both very popular at the time, so Pepsi decided to sponsor them or whatever. But I loved Şebnem Ferah at the time. She has a very powerful voice. And her music was one of those things that my dad really like approved, unlike Spice Girls or Britney Spears, because she was doing rock. And her, it's funny because I had a cassette of her first album, and I was using that as the soundtrack to these like stories I would make up, like play out with my Barbie dolls.
Nice.
So I would basically like do it like a whole play with my dolls. But anyways, that was the first show, and it blew my mind. And
Nice.
yeah, and I'm so glad that I shared that with my dad, who introduced me to a lot of music. And I think he introduced me to Şebnem Ferah too. So the last show that I went to was by this Australian band called These Nuts. And they're a hardcore band.
Names are amazing.
And this was in Istanbul a few weeks ago. And I mean, it was a good show. It's just not the kind of hardcore that I really like. It's like it's super masculine, and I guess like a lot of hardcore is, but this one in particular, I mean, the band is called These Nuts,
Right.
and it's a very representative
I
name.
mean.
Like the whole show smelled like These Nuts, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that is.
I went there with actually like my partner, whom we just started dating a few months ago, and that was like the 3rd show, I guess, that we went to. And he's not really into that band either, but he like bought a ticket and like asked me if I wanted to go. I'm like, yeah, why not? He lives in Istanbul, so I was gonna be there for that weekend anyways. So we went there, and I mean, it was fine. Like, we weren't in the mosh pit or anything. We were just like in the back and just like watching, and also watching people, and people were having a lot of fun. And it's also a venue that I don't really like a lot. The sound quality is not that great there. But I mean, yeah, we saw that band, and yeah, it's a different kind of an experience, I guess. But the best show that I saw is L7. and I saw them in Portland, and they put on quite a show. It was amazing. But also, it's a show that I enjoyed for another kind of a reason as well. And that reason is the audience. The audience was comprised of like so many different groups of people. That there were like some of them were metalheads. They really like heavy metal. Some of them were like really into grunge, and they were doing that whole like plaid shirts and things like that. Some of them were clearly punk rockers with like mohawks and stuff. And you know, some of them were just ordinary people, I guess. But it amazes me when it's a band that can bring together like people who enjoy so many different kinds of music. And L7 is very much like that. I mean, you could hear like all these different influences in their music, and they were so energetic, even though I mean, they're not old, but they are not as young as they used to be, obviously. But they were incredibly energetic, and they were on tour. Like we just finished a tour, and I don't understand how people just tour most of the year.
It's
Because it's an exhausting experience, even though it's so much fun. I don't think I would be able to do that for like 6 months or something. I think I would just, I would just get like too fed up with it at some point. But yeah, so even though they were on tour and the show was part of a tour, and even though they're not as young as they used to be when they first started playing this music, they were just incredibly dynamic and like so powerful, and drew the audience in so much. And yeah, it was just an amazing show.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'm like taking notes of bands I haven't heard of to check on later. Like that's the other benefit I'm getting from talking to all of our guests.
Totally.
So yeah, Fulden, thank you again so much for trusting us and sharing your story with us. In the last couple of minutes we have left as we sign off, we'd love to give you the floor for a minute to tell folks what you have going on, how they can contact you or listen to your music. Yeah, you can take it away.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. So right now I play in 2 bands. One of them is called Emaskülatör. The other one is called Literally Anything Before Bros. So our music is on Spotify and Bandcamp and YouTube and Apple Music and whatever else, you know, whatever other platform there is. We have quite a good distributor for our digital releases. So you can easily find our music and like our music videos and stuff. And you could contact me through my email address, which is fuldenshedemon@gmail.com.
All one word?
All one word, yeah.
Fuldenshedemon. Love it. All right.
Which is my stage name.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Love it. Fulden, thank you so much for being on and for just being our 10th episode. It's huge in double digits, so that's a lot of fun. So yeah, just thank you so much for coming on and exposing us to great music and your own music. And yeah, so that's it, everybody. We have reached the end of the episode. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss episodes. Also check out, being that, you know, we've got Fulden's music in the playlist today, we also have a Spotify and Apple Music playlist for all the songs that are on our episodes. You can find that by searching a Life in 6 Songs playlist on Apple Music and Spotify. So definitely go check that out. And with that, we will see you next time.